event today. The National Museum of Ireland celebrates the return of Out in the Past, the International Festival of LGBTI plus history. We've been joined by 15 cultural institutions over 24 days, 3 weeks, with 39 exciting events and one amazing all Ireland wide LGBTI plus festival. Galleries and museums, libraries, and archives across Ireland present Out in the Past 2022, which is an exciting celebration of events, talks, webinars, and workshops, which began on March 18, 2022, and will conclude on the 10th of April 2022. In just 4 years, this important festival, which aims to provide a platform for previously overlooked LGBTI plus histories, has grown from a small grassroots event in Belfast to an island-wide collaboration in 2022. From Dublin to Derry and Kilkenny to Mayo, this year's programme brings academics, activists, and the rich diversity of the LGBTI plus community together. Today, I would like to introduce our speaker. So we're joined today by Barry Quirk, who will present on the story of how Pride returned to the streets of Dublin after a 7-year absence. And it will detail the people behind the initiatives, their motivations and inspirations. And the presentation will conclude with some observations on the immediate impact of Dublin Pride 1992 and its wider implications for the future of prides in Ireland as well. And just to note before we begin, if you do have any questions, pop them into the chat below and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So I'm going to pass you over to Barry to begin the presentation. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Aisling. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. And welcome to this presentation on the rebirth of Dublin Pride. As Aisling mentioned, my name is Barry Quirk, and I was one of the organisers of the Pride March in 1992. This presentation explores Irish LGBT life, activism and AIDS activism in the 1980s and 1990s to provide the context for the 1992 Dublin Pride March. It discusses Pride celebrations in Ireland at the time, and it examines the immediate impetus to the 1992 March. It reveals the organisation and promotion activities of the march organisers, prior to describing the march itself. This presentation concludes by considering the immediate impacts and long-term significance of the march. Firstly, a little bit of personal background. I was a student in the College of Commerce, Rathmines, Dublin, from 1989 to 1991. While I was there, I set up an LGBT society, which was the first of its kind in Ireland in the technical education sector. My student LGBT activism brought me into Student Union and Union of Students of Ireland activities, particularly in relation to LGBT policy, women's rights, and sexual health and liberation politics. I have good memories of my involvement in LGBT student exchanges organised by my friend Jeff Evans and others between Irish and Manchester student bodies. I was also an active member of Dublin ACT UP, the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, and this, combined with my student LGBT activism, brought me into the orbit of other activists who wanted to re-establish Pride marches in Dublin. After 1992, I continued to be a member of the Dublin Pride Committee until 1996. So, what was it like to live in Ireland as a young gay man in the early 1990s? Well, it wasn't easy. For one thing, you were classed as a criminal for your choice and preference of sexual partners. This criminalisation was part of a social landscape that was very conservative and moralistic. And this atmosphere was conducive to a lack of interest, care and supports on the one hand, to outright hostility and violence on the other. One needed to think carefully about coming out, when and to whom, for fear of being ostracised by friends, family and difficulties at work, or even fear of losing one's livelihood. There was a blanket ban on abortion and ridiculous restrictions on access to life-saving contraception. The gay 90s anticipated by the Sunday Independent in early 1990 felt a long way off. But there was a feeling that we were on the cusp of change. Senator David Norris had won his famous case in the European Court of Human Rights. although successive Irish governments dragged their heels on implementing its findings. And to the surprise of many, Minister Ray Burke in 1989 extended his Incitement to Hatred bill to protect citizens from hate speech on the basis of their sexual orientation, the first piece of positive legislation for LGBT people on the Irish statute book. And the Catholic Church was no longer perceived as invincible as a result of the Bishop Casey scandal. So there was room for cautious optimism in 1992, despite the ongoing challenges that LGBT people faced in Ireland. What was LGBT life like in Ireland back then? How did we organise and represent ourselves? In his important 2017 research into the LGBT movement in Ireland from the 1970s to the 1990s, Patrick McDonagh outlines three key aspects of the movement. The first aspect is a network of LGBT organisations, social venues, support groups, and contacts situated in a broader network of supportive bodies and individuals. For example, the Irish Gay Rights Movement, Liberation for Irish Lesbians, National Gay Federation, Cork Lesbian Collective, Dublin Gay Collective, Galway Irish Gay Rights Movement, and venues such as the Hirschfeld Centre in Dublin and the Key Co-op in Cork. The second facet in McDonagh's framework is raising awareness on local and national media. And in particular, there were several significant appearances by gays and lesbians on national radio and television from the late 1970s to the early 1990s, not least a debate on LGBT rights hosted by RTÉ's Primetime in 1993. The third aspect of the framework is public visibility on the streets, starting with the Declan Flynn protest in Fairview, Dublin in 1983 and the subsequent Dublin Pride marches and protests outside government buildings that it engendered or influenced. So these three aspects form a framework that can act as a useful lens to understand the origins and events relating to the Dublin Pride March in 1992. But what of the state of LGBT activism in the early 1990s? Actually, most activists' efforts were directed at addressing the exigencies of the AIDS crisis, namely Gay Health Action and later AIDS Action Alliance, as attested by the two quotes on screen from a journal article written by Maurice Casey in 2018. Casey makes the point that the deadly necessity of dealing with the threat of AIDS channeled the efforts of radical activists into more pragmatic forms of activism. He continues, AIDS activism had become the movement's solitary stimulus, beyond the individual legal action continuously being taken by David Norris. The fight against AIDS is where the most focus and energy were directed and expended to save the lives of community members, to prevent the spread of the virus, and to campaign for greater awareness, sensitivity, and improved treatment. But this is not the full picture. The late 1980s saw the re-emergence of LGBT activism with the foundation of the Gay and Lesbian Equality Network, or GLEN, in 1987. In Casey's words, as a professional lobbying group, which nonetheless did engage in direct action. Casey continues, the pickets and protest tactics gave way to a more democratized form of activism, whilst retaining the central precept of placing the dangers faced by the gay community in universal contexts. But he adds that it would take an economic upswing and re-enchantment with the possibilities of activism in the early 90s for the movement to regain momentum. Specifically in relation to Irish Pride events, and following on from the Declan Flynn protest in Fairview in 1983, Pride parades were organised across Ireland later that summer, Pride having been celebrated previously without parades. Thereafter, until 1985, the Dublin Lesbian and Gay Collective organised Pride marches in Dublin, But with the onset of the AIDS crisis and the emigration of LGBT activists, the energy and impetus to organise pride marches dissipated as the confidence of the LGBT community weakened. Towards the end of the 1980s, cultural events were organised to celebrate pride, such as movie screenings, debates, and theatrical performances, but the ongoing and regular visibility provided by taking to the streets under the banner of Pride each year was largely absent apart from specific protests. A good example of the type of events organised in Dublin to celebrate Pride in the late 80s, early 90s can be seen in the Pride 1992 flyer on screen, which lists a movie screening of My Own Private Idaho, a walking tour of Gay Dublin, the performance of a trio of short plays by the Muted Cupid Theatre Company, a barbecue in Wicklow, and a tea dance in the Clarence Hotel. Now, thus far, I have outlined the contemporary domestic context in broad strokes. Now, the immediate impetus for the return of pride marches to the streets of Dublin was international in character. Earlier in 1992, a request from the Irish Lesbian and Gay Organisation, ILGO, to participate formally in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in New York was rejected by the parade's conservative and reactionary organisers, the Ancient Order of Hibernians. This rejection posed a challenge to Irish LGBT activists back in the old country. If we could participate in St. Patrick's Day parades in Ireland, then this would support ILGO and expose the hypocrisy of the Ancient Order of Hibernians. After a targeted campaign organised by Glenn, Bord Fáilte relented from its previous position and granted permission to LGBT people to participate in St. Patrick's Day parades across Ireland under our own banners. Cork was the first to react to this turn of events, and the LGBT community very successfully participated in the St. Patrick's Day parade there in 1992. As Orla Egan, a Cork lesbian activist, declared, "We had reason to celebrate. We brought the words lesbian, gay, and bisexual into people's vocabulary and consciousness, and we made ourselves visible in a proud, happy, and positive way." So, why seek permission to participate in parades organised by other bodies when we could organise our own parade? So that was the thinking of a coterie of LGBT activists inspired by Izzy Kamikaze's earnest hope to see a return of pride marches to the streets of Dublin, harking back to her involvement in the earlier Dublin Pride marches. A core group consisting of Izzy, Owen Freeney, and myself aimed to make this desire a reality. To do this, we needed to build support within and outside the LGBT community, and in turn to achieve this, we needed to make a convincing argument made by an organised group such as ourselves. Taking inspiration from ACT UP, we needed a consistent message and convincing imagery from the outset, hence the need early on for a logo and some t-shirts. Now, I was tasked with designing the logo on the t-shirt. In the days before Pride rainbow flags gained in popularity, pink and black triangles were used as symbols of our struggle for civil rights in commemoration of the gay and lesbian victims of Nazi Germany, who were forced to wear pink and black triangles respectively in the concentration camps. I needed to incorporate the pink and black triangles in some form, and I thought the kissing couple brought an intimate, human and electric quality to the otherwise geometric form of the logo. Now, there was a more practical aspect to the design as well. So given the financial constraints of the time, printing costs were significantly higher if more than one color was involved, more than one colored ink. So the design needed to work with monocolor printing. So black ink on a white paper gave prominence to the black triangles with notional pink triangles behind them, whereas pink ink on a black t-shirt gave effect to both pink and black triangles. And we printed around 30 t-shirts in total. And as you can see on screen, we wore our T-shirts at a meeting organised by Glenn on the 11th of April 1992 to discuss the lack of progress by the Irish government in bringing forward decriminalisation legislation to give effect to the European Court of Human Rights ruling in the David Norris case. Now, during this meeting, Izzy made a passionate speech to rally support for the planned march, and in the photo on screen you can see Owen Freeney making some important points, with both Owen and I sporting our Pride T-shirts. As the GCN, Gay Community News article points out, there was some hope, and it expressed the view that we can parade on the 4th of July, confident that lesbian and gay life goes on, despite the Irish government dragging its heels on decriminalisation. We did, of course, need to do a lot more than attend meetings, regardless of how important those meetings were. We needed to rally the troops, and to do that, we needed to advertise our planned march by putting up posters in social venues frequented by LGBT people. I adapted the logo to create the poster shown on screen, which is the original artwork. Like the logo, it was drawn by hand, and the objective was to produce good, clean A3 photocopied posters in order to save money. Another avenue to promote the planned march was Gay Community News, and its editor held the front page of the July 1992 edition for an article encouraging our community to take to the streets. Written by myself with significant input from Owen and Izzy, the lead article in this edition encourages the readership of GCN to come along and support this celebration of the ongoing contribution of lesbians and gay men to Irish life. The article also asks the community to get involved in the organisation of the march and to contribute your time, energy, ideas, money, banners, balloons, high heels, Doc Martens, tutus, bongos, and whistles. The Dublin AIDS Alliance offices on Parnell Street became our group's base. From there, we publicised our event within the LGBT community and within political and welfare organisations, but also further afield by issuing a press release and by contacting political parties, trade unions, and left-leaning civil liberties organisations. In other words, every group and organisation sympathetic to our cause that might be willing to support us. The Irish Independent on the 17th of June based an article on our press release informing its readership that the gay and lesbian community was planning a series of parades to heighten public awareness of our sexuality. And to return briefly to MacDonagh's framework and how it relates specifically to the 1992 Pride March, we can see that all three elements of the framework are in play. Dublin Pride March 1992 utilised a pre-existing network of groups, organisations and allies that was established by LGBT activists over the course of several decades. We raised awareness at a community, local and national level via our communications and awareness campaigns that we hoped would ensure the success of the public visibility to be delivered by the Pride March itself. And of course, we needed to complete detailed planning for the event itself. We contacted the Gardaí to let them know about our march so that they could restrict traffic along the planned route and provide policing. Banners were needed, not only for the march itself, but also for supporting organisations such as Dublin AIDS Alliance and AIDS Helpline. I remember some very late evenings in the Dublin AIDS Alliance offices, cutting canvas banners and painting them with volunteers such as Donald Traynor and many others. We needed stewards as well, and Izzy, myself and two friends from Manchester, Jeff Evans and Richard Jackson, did the honours. You can see one of our hastily made stewards' tabards on screen alongside a flyer with the planned route of the march. But we were also aware that we needed to bring a fun aspect to the serious issues that the march was intended to address. So we advertised a fancy dress competition with prizes for the best outfits to be awarded at the end of the parade by the fashion police, namely Owen Freeney and Wade Lynham. It was also felt that some of our community might be more comfortable in fancy dress costume because it might make them less recognizable, and we hoped to encourage their participation in this way. So on the day of the Pride March itself, we assembled at the Garden of Remembrance on Parnell Square about an hour or two before the march at 3 p.m. There was a good turnout from the community and its organisations, including Dublin AIDS Alliance, Glen AIDS Helpline, Gay Switchboard Dublin, Dublin Act Up, Northern Ireland Gay Rights Association, and other gay and lesbian organisations. There was a great response from our allies to the Labour Party, Democratic Left, Socialist Workers' Party, Workers' Solidarity Movement, Sinn Féin, Irish Congress of Trade Unions, and many, many other unions. When the time came to line up the participant groups and banners, there was a big surge from the allies, and we needed to make sure that we had enough gay and lesbian groups at the start of the march to make it unambiguous to onlookers that this was a gay and lesbian pride march, to make our event distinct from any other protests and marches held in the city. We produced a leaflet with chants for march participants. We're here, we're queer, and we're not going shopping. And 2468, is that Garda really straight? We're very popular with marchers. Official estimates put participant numbers at 200, but we as organisers believe there were more people on the march. Let's watch a short video clip from the RTE archives.
Just simply won't change, and I think the PDs have to take some of the blame as well. Although they have promised that legislation will be changed, ministers are confusing each other, and I think they refuse to change it because it's not within the thinking of Fianna Fáil, and I think they're a Catholic party for a Catholic country.
Great. So as you saw from the clip, we marched down O'Connell Street and onto DeLear Street, around Trinity College to Nassau Street and Kildare Street. We noticed members of our community walking with the march from the safety of the pavement, looking to see how it progressed. Some joined in, but others were more comfortable walking alongside the march. We blew our whistles. Izzy and Jeff were on the megaphones encouraging the chanting and noise making, especially as we passed government buildings on Kildare Street. Then it was around St. Stephen's Green, and as we passed the Royal College of Surgeons, my friend and fellow steward Jeff Evans asked me, "Barry, where will I take them?" This was one of the minor details that was missed during planning, and we knew we would end in St. Stephen's Green somewhere, but where exactly? I decided on entering the main gate, and we stopped just inside the main gate where we gave our final speeches, words of thanks, and the fashion police, Owen and Wade, awarded the prizes for the best costumes. So here's an image of that final gathering in St. Stephen's Green. Then it was over to the Loft Bar, which had opened early to welcome participants on the march, and the owner very kindly laid on some food for us, which was a very nice gesture. It was in the Loft Bar that we saw the evening RTE news that day. So that's the Irish language news programme, in which our march was covered, and that was the clip that you have just seen now. But another sign of the times, the march did not feature on the main evening English news programme, because the march was too risky to include in the main evening news, where it was deemed more experimental for RTE to feature it in their Irish language news programme. Reception on the streets was mixed, ranging from bewilderment and amusement to negativity. But by and large, the march completed without incident. One of the features of public visibility activities organised by the LGBT community in Ireland in the 1970s and 1980s was their temporary nature, causing Pádraig Kerrigan in his PhD thesis to comment that the community needed to come out over and over again. Dublin Pride 1992 was the last time that the LGBT community needed to come out to the city of Dublin by visibly walking its streets as an identifiable group. Our march established future Pride parades as an annual fixture in Dublin. Indeed, the parade in 1993 became a celebration of gay decriminalisation, which was passed by the Oireachtas just a few days before the 1993 parade took place. Some further impacts and significance then. In addition, the 1992 march helped create the juggernaut that is Pride today, with its much greater size, diversity, number and range of organisations taking place and taking part, including large multinational companies showing their support via sponsorship and by showcasing their workplace as a positive LGBT space. In contrast to 1992, nowadays all major political parties in Ireland have LGBT wings and are eager to participate prominently in Pride. The 1992 march has also entered the cultural memory of Dublin Pride itself, as can be seen on screen from the Pride programme from 2002 and its article looking fondly back at the 1992 event. From a historiographic perspective, it is important that personal testimonies such as this one are included in the body of primary sources so that as full a picture of historical events can be formed by historical research and debate. And I thank Outing the Past 2022 and the National Museum of Ireland for this opportunity to contribute to that body of historical knowledge. At the time, the 1992 march was both a reflection of increased confidence in our community and it contributed to our confidence as well. It was a big step forward for the visibility of LGBT people in Ireland's capital city. So thank you for attending this virtual presentation. I will now be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks so much, Barry. That was great. As Barry said, if you have any questions, just type them into the chat. But I suppose, Barry, to kick off, you had mentioned the posters and the flyers that you made, and you had some photographs. They're beautiful pieces in their own right. How do you think that's changed so much, I suppose, around promotion now that we have everything online from Instagram to Twitter? Do you think that's taken away the personal impact of a very kind of raw DIY flyer or poster versus all the kind of access that we have online?
Yeah, well, over the course of 30 years, technology and the general perception of LGBT people now is just vastly different. I suppose one of the endearing things about being a gay activist in the early 1990s is that very aspect of hand-drawn logos and posters, and keeping an eye on the budget strings as well, making sure we'd love to go for more than one color printing, but the funds weren't there. So I thought that was an interesting thing to incorporate. So we give people nowadays an insight into how we went about doing things. So there, for example, the the restriction for, a single color ink was inbuilt into the logo, for example, and the posters and everything else. What we were looking for were nice, clean A3 photocopies. So, whatever we needed to do to make that happen, I think that was the important thing. When we got those clean photocopies, we were away, So nowadays, hand-drawn artwork and leaflets and things like that, yes, we know still does happen, but not to the same extent. You've got everybody's got access to computers and devices and all manner of there's all manner of apps out there that can actually do all this stuff for you now. But I think I just think it's nice that there's I'm delighted I was actually retained the original artwork. I still have it. So after 30 years, but which is good and came in useful, obviously, for today's event. But yeah, it's a very, very personal thing, really. It was actually a great honor as well to be asked by the 1992 Pride Committee to design the T-shirt and the poster, and as you saw from the GCN article and the banners, the logo was everywhere. It was all over the place. So it was just very, very nice to be asked to do that.
I suppose going off that, you mentioned you're so lucky to have a copy of the flyer and the poster, and you shown the image of the stewards design that you did as well. Why do you think it's so important to collect those kind of objects that maybe people might think they have them in their collections at home, that they might think, oh, is that really significant? It's a poster or flyer, it's quite old. Why do you think it's so important to hold on to these objects or even donate them to museums and galleries?
Well, yes, those kind of objects, for example, what we've been discussing, the logo, the T-shirt design, poster, all they're very personal things for the person who created them or the people who are involved in their creation. But they also, as objects, provide very, very tangible links to the people involved, the times. Again, they're a reflection of what was possible at the time. They are of the moment. So it's really, really important that those items be preserved. And I will be making sure now that I will be taking steps to preserve the artifacts that I have, because I'm not going to be around forever. So at some point I have to make some kind of arrangements to ensure their survival. So, and I would encourage other people like myself who may have those little items of memorabilia somewhere in their houses, or in boxes in the attic or in the storeroom or whatever, to have a look, see what you have, look what's there. You'd be surprised what's important and could be really, really significant. So, do share them with the archives and museums, because that's the best way that they get preserved, and the memories, they continue. So,
exactly. I mean, it's very important, and like you said, people could have treasure troves of this material in their collections in their attic somewhere, and they might necessarily know. So it's good to kind of get that message out, to have a look and see if there is anything that you might have had, if you're even there for the event itself. I know, Bart, you and I discussed at the time that you kind of when you're organizing the event in 1992, you kind of didn't think about, oh, we have to record all this in photographs, but you've found a lot of material over the years, particularly that really amazing black and white photograph at the very end in St. Stephen's Green. It's very, very important to have that as part of the history and the personal aspect of it as well. So it really ties into that, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I was I was very fortunate in being able to gather together the images that I found, because 1992 Pride March was a year before Chris Robson started to consistently photograph Pride parades. So just this discussion is just the event itself is just 1 year previous to when Chris was dutifully recording the Pride events in Dublin while he was still with us. So we're grateful to Chris for providing his archive of Pride photographs. So, for example, that's really important. And I was actually able to use one or two of them in my own presentation there. You would have seen the credits, particularly the 1993 image of the Pride Parade there and the steps of the Central Bank of Ireland. So that's from Chris's archive. So, yeah, so really, really important. And yes, I did have a concern about imagery and having enough visual stimulus on the slides, but I think we got there.
It was great, and it was great to have Doherty archives.
Yes, absolutely. That was wonderful. That's a godsend. That 40-second clip, because it really just brings the whole event to life. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The organisers of the Pride March, we were far too busy to think about maybe might be an idea for one of us to bring a camera and take a few snaps. We had so many different things to attend to, and as I said, there were some details that we missed, as I mentioned, but so it was just there was just simply too much for the first march in 7 years. With such a gap, there was so much knowledge and experience that we needed to build to actually bring back, to remember, to experience for ourselves, so that we could then learn from the experience of organizing and being on a march. And then the future prides, the future parades, then were able to benefit from that knowledge and experience that we had encountered for the first time in 7 years in 1992. So it was a learning experience.
Definitely.
But it was a very, very useful one, So
yeah,
that's another contribution of the 1992 march. It contributes to all of the succeeding pride parades and celebrations. So we were building on our experience year on year. And as I said, 1992 was the last time that the LGBT community needed to come out onto the streets of Dublin. From that point onwards, there wasn't the same stop-start aspect to visibility that Pádraig Kerrigan noted in his PhD thesis.
Definitely. Well, I think we'll leave it there. And thanks so much, Barry, for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Thanks so much. And just to let everybody know, if you would like to watch back the talk, it will be recorded also, and will go up in the museum's YouTube video, and will be kept as a record for ourselves forever as well, which is very, very important. And if you would like to watch back on any of the events that we've had for Out in the Past, please do. They're all available on Facebook and the museum's YouTube account as well. So on behalf of the National Museum of Ireland, I'd love to thank Barry for joining us today and providing your really, really important story and your research into Pride as well. And we really, really appreciate it. So thanks so much.
You're very welcome. Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure to present this afternoon.
Perfect. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.